when you do one thing well, people are more likely to trust you with anything else you want to do next.
Else.
It's very difficult to focus on multiple things, pursue them with the same amount of intensity at the same time, and succeed at all. So you're better off focusing on one thing, getting good at it, making sure everybody recognizes you for that thing, and then that makes it easy for them to trust you or whatever else you want to build next. Talking about the creator aura and building brands that stick. And one thing we hear a lot is that the content space is saturated. I can't count the number of times someone has told me I want to become a content creator, but it's just so saturated. Everybody is now a content creator. They say it's like it's a bad thing. And I always beg to disagree. There's no such thing as a saturation of quality content. People never have enough of quality content. We only have more than enough of content that isn't great. The only reason we feel like it is saturated is because there simply isn't enough quality out there. Or it's become easier to tell what's quality and what's not because the barrier to entry is non-existent. Now, anyone with a smartphone and an internet connection can wake up tomorrow and they're a content creator. Years ago, you needed so much more than that. So today, I just want to establish a few truths and also help you rethink how you want to navigate this creative life and this life as a creator. All right. First thing I want us to agree on is that everyone has a personal brand. Has anyone here heard of the phrase or the term personal brand before? I think it's something we throw around a lot now. Have you heard about what a personal brand is? Personal brand, personal branding. Yes, all over the place. Now, for the sake of this session, I like to define your personal brand as what people say about you when you're not in the room, which Mpumi's session corroborated because she said, your brand is not your logo. Your brand is not just your colors. It's how people feel around you and what you put out into the world. So I like to think about it as your personal brand is what people say about you when you're not in the room. That's how people really feel about you, right? What they can say when they're not afraid when they're not afraid how you will perceive them, that's how they really feel. So by this definition, everyone has a personal brand. Whether the only difference is there are people who are building their personal brand intentionally and there are people who are leaving it up to chance. That's it. But everybody has a personal brand. Even the woman who sells akara or street food down the road from your house, she has a personal brand. How do I know she does? Because if there's one woman who, whenever you go there, she asks, "Oh, how are you? I haven't seen you in 3 months. Did you go to school? Did you travel?" That's different from the other woman who, on the other side of the street, every time you go, she doesn't really ask you any questions. She just says, "How much do you want to buy?" You tell her how much, you give her money. Those two people make you feel two different ways. I'm not saying one is bad or one is good, but those two people, you have a different perception of them just based on how they interact with you, right? So everyone does have a personal brand. 30 years ago, in order to build a personal brand, you needed to spend a lot of money. In fact, you had to be a celebrity. You had to be on TV. You had to have written a book. You had to be in the newspaper. You had to be a celebrity. You had to be a movie star, something like that, in order to be able to have anything to do with what people say about you on a large scale. But now, with a smartphone and an internet connection, by telling your story, you can actively influence what will be said about you. You can wake up today and decide that in 1 year from now, in 2 years from now, every time they're looking for the most influential voice in makeup in Africa, I want to be mentioned. And by putting your story out on social media, you can actually make that happen by just talking about the topic with authority and of course with credibility over and over and over again. Just as just as close as 30 years ago, that was impossible. So we're living in such miraculous times. Like you can literally change your life, you can turn your life around. I've been a full-time content creator for 6 years. By any standards, there's no reason why I should be here teaching you because anybody who's been doing something for 6 years on the grand scheme of things, is still in the early stages of their career. But what social media does is social media can help you shorten a journey that's supposed to take a longer time. So from my first year as a content creator, I was already teaching. And there are people who would argue that you're only 22 years old. What do you know? Why should you teach? But the thing about social media is there's always somebody who needs what you have to offer. If you've been in business for 1 year and you feel like, oh, I've only been doing it for 1 year, so I don't have any experience, I don't have anything to share with anyone. There's someone who's been doing it for only 1 month and would benefit greatly from what you have to share. Not because they can't learn from somebody who's been doing it for 20 years, but there is a sense in which the person who's been doing it for 20 years is even teaching in a way that goes over people's heads sometimes because they can't remember what it is like to be a beginner. So a lot of times, you who has only been doing it for a short time, your content might be even more valuable to someone who's just starting. But what the trap we fall into is we compare ourselves to other people. We think if I if I'm going to be able to give value, then I have to be at the highest level. I have to be a guru. But that couldn't be further from the truth. All you need to do is teach what you know. All you need to do is share from what you know. All you need to do is tell your story. Can we move to the next slide, please? Some creators have skills, some creators have followers, some creators have so many different things going for them. But the ones that win long term, they have aura. And I really, really love that word because it denotes something that is very difficult to explain, difficult to quantify, difficult to put in words, but also difficult to resist. The formula that makes up every creator that we love, every creator that we are crazy about and we don't know why, the thing that makes that happen is that factor in them. Do you understand? It's that factor in them that is able to combine multiple elements that are supposed to be seemingly unrelated, but they're able to combine it in a beautiful way and present it to you in a way that you never thought of. But even though you've never thought of it, you also feel like, wow, I could have thought of that. But I didn't think of that. But I could have thought of that because it feels so close to home. So they're mixing elements of the unfamiliar with the familiar, with new concepts, and putting it together to give you something beautiful. That's something that you can learn. It's not rocket science. And in the next 5 minutes, I'm going to attempt to teach you. And if you guys don't understand, I can, when we go into the Q&A, you can ask more specific questions. But this is how chefs come up with recipes. If someone somewhere saying you can't combine gari and beans, you can't combine this and that, they don't go together. And a chef is like, watch me, and they do a lot of experiments. It probably doesn't work the first time. Doesn't Probably doesn't work the first 5 times. They tried to, I'm sure the first time somebody tried to make akara with palm oil, everybody's like, no, that's not gonna work. Why would you do like that? It will stain the thing, it will look different, it will look terrible. But that's where creativity comes from. These risks that we take in combining elements that people think are not supposed to go together. So if you're trying to figure out what's my thing, how am I going to stand out? How am I going to create a brand that will stick? I always like to say, start with who you are. Start with who you are. We can go to the next slide. And why do I say this? Because first of all, you don't have anybody else, A lot of us became creators because we had other dreams, we had other things that we were gunning for, but social media just ended up being the perfect vehicle for that thing. Personally, I never was trying to be a content creator. I didn't even know content creation was a thing. I used to watch YouTube videos, but I didn't know that the name for people who did that was content creators. In fact, back then, YouTubers didn't call themselves content creators. They just called themselves YouTubers. For anybody who's like an OG YouTube viewer, I'm talking from before 10 years ago, they just called themselves YouTubers. Content creation is a more modern term. So I always say people, you need to start with who you are because that's all you have. That's all you have. For the person who was saying, in order to start, you just need to be pretty, you need to be beautiful and have a supportive spouse. That's what Mpumi had. You need to think about what do I have, right? Don't think Mpumi had that. So because I don't have that, then this must not be possible for me. No, you need to sit down and dig into what do I have? And that's what I want to talk about in this next part. I want you to dig into what I like to describe as your five factors, and I'll explain. Now, there are five factors that no two people on the face of the earth have the same combination of. No two people on the face of the earth have the same combination of these five factors. Whether you're siblings, twins, husband and wife, no two people have the same combination of these five factors. And I'll explain. One is your education. Now, what's your education? Everything that contributes, everything that makes up the amount of information you have about the world, yourself, including school, but not limited to school. A session like this would also count as education because you're learning, you're gathering more information, you're gathering new knowledge. Tomorrow, somebody asks you a question, you now have an answer that you didn't have when you woke up this morning. So all of that counts as your education. Next is exposure. So exposure is what you have been exposed to as a result of the circumstances of your life. So, for example, if you grew up in South Africa, you had a vastly different childhood from someone who grew up in Nigeria. If your mom was a nurse, you were exposed to different factors from if your mom was a teacher. If your dad was a soldier, you probably grew up in a barracks. If your parents were diplomats, it means maybe you did primary school in Zambia, and then at some point you did senior secondary school in Zimbabwe, and then your parents moved again, so you went to Korea. So now you speak Korean, but you went to an international school when you were in Korea, so you speak French. You get. So everything that you have been exposed to as a result of the circumstances of your life, I don't know your life. If you sit down, you'll be able to figure out even more. Next is your interests and your passions. Here, I like to ask people, what's something you could talk about for 1 hour with no preparation? Everybody has something. Everybody. If you say you don't have, you're lying. Or maybe you're saying you don't have because you're ashamed of your own. Maybe your own is celebrity gossip. So you're not proud to admit that that's what it is. But you have to own it. People have made millions off of celebrity gossip. That's just an example. So, what are your interests? And when I ask people about their interests and their passions, I also like to ask, what makes you mad? You know, what change do you want to see in the world? There are people who have started entire businesses off of the things that make them mad. They were looking for a certain kind of solution. They couldn't find it in the market. They created it. Every now and then I meet people who say, I make the films that I want to watch, that I wanted to watch and nobody was making. So I started making the films. So the change you want to see in the world, a lot of times, is also a pointer to your passions, not just the things you're passionate about, but also the things that you're mad about. Next is your expertise. Whatever it is you've gotten paid to do ever in your life, whatever it is, another word for this would be vocation. Whatever it is you've gotten paid to do, um, like Mpumi was saying, make doing nails, whatever it is you've learned as a skill that you can make money from. You don't have to be passionate about it, you just have to be good at it, good enough to actually get paid. That counts as what would be your expertise. Now, experience or experiences, the most dynamic of them all, because two people can have the same encounter and have two very different experiences, right? How many times have you watched a movie with a friend and one person is like, wow, that was an amazing movie. I can't wait to get more people on board to watch that movie. I loved that film. I'm bringing more of my friends to watch it. And the second person is just like, that was so out of my time. I'll never get back. That was a waste of my time. And it's the same film that they watched in the same room, under the same elements, the same AC, the same everything. But one person had a good time, the other person had a terrible time. The same thing. It's also the same as children often have the same experience with their parents. I'm the firstborn in my family. Um, I have a sister who's like 10 years younger than me. It's not the same parents that raised us, right? The person that raised me as the firstborn, vastly different from the person that raised her 10 years later, So now, when you put all these five factors together and you dig deep enough, These are the things that give you a unique perspective of the world that nobody else has other than you. So when you want to make content on social media about makeup, you're not just making content about makeup. You're making content about makeup as you, based on everything you know about yourself, your past, your education, your exposure, the countries you've been to, the food you like, the things you love to watch. You're tying all of them together. There's a food content creator I really love, and every now and then, like, everybody just makes food content, right? And just say, oh, today I'm making jollof, or today I'm making sushi. But he will say he makes his videos and says, I'm making videos for everyone who's an economics major, right? And he will tell a story around it. I'm making this because of this and this and this. So whatever kind of content you want to put out into the world, you need to know that your niche is not enough. Being in the right niche is not enough. Who are you as a person? Have you dug deep into who you are as a person? So, of course, this is not enough time. So, I want you to sit down with a paper and pen after this session. Sit down with a paper and pen and ask yourself, in what ways has my education contributed to the perspective, the unique perspective I have of the world? In what way has my exposure helped? In what way has my interest pushed me to things that are not the same as what everybody would normally be used to? Your expertise, your experiences, all these things allow you to see the world from a different perspective from everybody else. And the problem sometimes is that you've seen yourself finish, and that's Nigerian slang for you are over familiar with yourself. So a lot of things are actually groundbreaking, but because you've done it, you do it all the time, it comes naturally to you. It's just something you do. You don't see it as special. And that's why I asked you when I was talking about your interest, what's something you could talk about for 1 hour with no preparation? That I'll just wake you up from sleep and you can just blast and talk about it for 1 hour with no preparation. That's something you need to pay attention to. All right. That's something you need to pay attention to. This is sit with yourself, start with who you are, what you know about yourself, and it'll help you. Let's jump to the next slide, please. A lot of times when I talk to people, they say I haven't started because I haven't discovered my niche. How do I discover my niche? How do I discover my brand? You don't discover your brand, because when you say discover, you talk about it like it's out there. Maybe I'll find it, maybe I won't find it. I'm waiting for it, like you're waiting for the one or something. That's not what this is. You decide based on the information that is available to you. You decide that this is who I want to target. This is the kind of content I want to make. This is the niche in which I want to operate. And then you use storytelling to repeat it until it catches on. And the beautiful thing about deciding is you can change your mind. If you focus on, oh, I need to discover, then when you discover, you feel like, oh, this is fate, this is fate, like we're meant to be. And when it gets hard, you think, if it was meant to be, then it wouldn't be so hard. But that's false. A lot of the times, the things that we will succeed at will involve some difficulty, and difficulty is not an indication of the wrong path. It's just part of life. Everything gets hard at some point. So I want you to very confidently decide, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to give it 1 month. I'm going to give it 3 months. I'm going to give it 6 months. Then after that 6 months, I will evaluate. I'll check what are the results. What did I get from this? If it doesn't work, I move in a different direction, make an informed decision. But what you're doing, waiting to discover it, I swear to you, you will learn more on the road. You will get more clarity getting your hands dirty and getting on the road than you ever will from brainstorming, than you ever will from the planning process. Ask anybody who has ever started a business. Even if you spend 1 year coming up with the business plan, coming up with the supply chain, all of that, the things you will learn in the first month of business, nothing in that 1 year of planning could have prepared you for it. Nothing. So the best thing you can do for yourself is to start as soon as you can, get on the road. The clarity you're looking for, the validation you're looking for, whatever it is you need is going to come to you on the road. Thank you so much, guys.